Hello, and welcome to another episode of Ffilm Crack Craic, the show where we talk about films that have fallen through the cracks of history or can be found in cracks or that are helped by watching them on crack. As usual, I'm one of your hosts, Nicholas O'Shenanigans, and your other host is regular host,
Clive Davis.
Clive, and we have a very special guest curator back again in the form of Gav Crimson, whose blog is a inestimable source of information about all things weird and wonderful and sketchy and sleazy and English. Gav, do you want to say hello to everybody?
Yeah, everyone.
Awesome. Gav has kindly come back and is has kind of queued up or whatever programmed, I guess, a couple of films for us this week. So, Gav, what have you got on the docket for us?
We'll look at the two films of Antony Balch and A 1,000-Year-Old Mummy Rises from the Grave to tell us the secrets of sex. And then we're off on a hairy holiday for his last film, Horror Hospital.
Yes. Yes, Hairy Holidays definitely stuck with me. I think at one point Askwith says like, "Ooh, I fancy a hairy holiday." Oh, no, I fancy something a bit hairy. That's what he said.
Yeah. So these two films, I mean, it's slightly different for the format because you can actually find these, right? There are still DVDs about as far as I know, but I think they're still not quite as high profile as they should be. Maybe let's put it that way.
Especially The Secrets of Sex. I think I only heard about that from not that long ago. Again, Clive and I read this book, The Bodies Beneath, which has a lengthy section on that film. It's the first I'd ever heard of it. So I was excited when you queued it or when you programmed it first because I wanted to get to it anyway. So
yeah, it came out on DVD in 2005, but prior to that, it was really hard to say the hardest thing that Antony Balch did. That was everything. Horror Hospital was right. The Burroughs short film. Yeah, Secrets of Sex was pretty elusive for many years.
Yeah, I remember hearing about it, but yeah, like not being able to see it until that DVD. By the way, are we 100% on the pronunciation? Is it Balch? Is it Bulk or
Balch? I think, yeah.
Okay.
Balch, yeah.
Because I wasn't sure because I don't think I've ever heard anyone mention his name before. Oddly.
The audio commentaries on the film Balch, yeah, Antony Balch.
Yes,
okay.
I didn't get to the audio commentaries, unfortunately. Are they for both of them?
By the producer Richard Garden, yeah. So, yeah.
Oh, that's probably worth a listen then.
Yeah, very good.
I didn't have that. Right. I'm gonna have to make a point of listening to the.
Me too. So, Gav, you want to tell us a little bit about Antony? I know a little bit from what I read in this book, but potentially viewers are not going to know who he is.
Unique sort of individual in many ways, a sort of one-off. I mean, he began as a sort of experimental filmmaker and made films with friend William Burroughs, and he was a distributor as well as a filmmaker. And he was also a gay man with a talent for marketing exploitation films, straight men, often much better at it than the heterosexual competition. So, yeah, interesting guy. And quite ahead of his time, he was like releasing movies by people like Russ Meyer, Jess Franco, and Ted B. Michaels, and years before that cult following sort of sprung up around them.
He died relatively young as well, right? 1980 in his early 40s, right?
Early 40s, yeah. Only ever made two feature films.
It was interesting to me about him as well. He seems to have appreciated like the art house and the exploitation equally, and the kind of the camp that can be attributed to both in a way, right? It's a little bit in the same way as John Waters seems to be a connoisseur of the very arty and the very sleazy as well.
Yeah.
He seems to be interested in that similar sort of weird crossover space.
And as a distributor, he's sort of most famous probably actor and distributor was releasing the Todd Browning film, Free, banned in the UK for decades.
Right.
Yeah, and the silent movie Hexen, she released as Witchcraft Through the Ages, sort of gave it a hit 1960s sort of makeover vibe in William Burroughs through the narration.
Yeah, I think that's the version most people were familiar with, right? For a long time was the one with the William Burroughs. Speaking of William Burroughs as well, I don't know if you've seen the short films that he did with Antony Balch as well, but they're quite interesting. The Cut-Ups and Towers Open Fire, right? They're both quite interesting. And then they did another one called Bill and Tony. But yeah, it's interesting that he did hang out with William S. And I suppose, yeah, he was on the fringes of that whole scene in both Paris and London, so he probably interacted with. I can't remember the Cut-Ups. Is Ryan Geesin in it as well, or is it just stock footage of him? Or I can't remember.
I think he was involved. I mean, apparently, Brian Geesin, he maybe wrote some of Secrets of Sex. I think he once claimed to get given. It's like 5 credited screenwriters.
Yes, I did notice that.
Balch, Elliot Stein, and 2 or 3 other people who don't seem to have any other credits and may have been pseudonyms for people.
So you think Brian Geesin might be one of these people hiding under?
Possibly, yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. The other thing worth mentioning as well about again that kind of interesting crossover between the arty and the exploitation world is he was famous for retitling films, right, to make them more exciting propositions. The one that always jumps out, I can't remember what the original film was called. It was a very experimental French film based on a Arabal play. But when he played it, it became Weirdo, right? Which is such a great. I mean,
yeah.
If you were walking past a marquee and you saw that, you'd be forking out your money to go.
Yeah, no doubt.
What's the other one? The Doctor in the Nude was the famous retitling of it. Originally called Shock Treatment.
Oh right, yes.
Yeah.
Oh right. There's someone in that, isn't there? Is Alan Delon or something in that? It's like
yeah. Apparently, Delon's people tried to sue Antony Balch for retitling the film. But there is a scene where he plays the Doctor, and there's a scene where he's in the news. So
right.
Yes, that reductive approach to titling the film, but that's awesome. He was a good-looking gent. The picture of him up at Wikipedia, he was a handsome man. Was Antony.
Hated to be photographed though. Apparently, not many photographs of him in circulation. He had like a superstition about being photographed and belief that it takes away part of your soul or something like that.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, so that sort of filters into sort of Secrets of Sex, with the photographer sequence.
Oh yes.
That sort of works into that sort of phobia he had. Photographed actually.
Okay. In fact, now that you mention it, I'm pretty sure that the picture I've seen of him is actually a still from one of those Burroughs films. Yeah. So yeah, it's not actually a photograph. So
yeah, there's maybe about 3 or 4 photographs of him. I assume it had to be photographed for like passport or things like that. So but very few photographs of him. And yet he's in most of his films. He didn't seem to have any problems with appearing on film.
The moving image is okay. That's less likely to steal your immortal soul than that static image.
Well, it's obviously something he shared with William S. Burroughs and that whole bunch, right? Is that weird mix of, on the one hand, being very progressive and forward-thinking and having this kind of logical kind of Occam's razor approach to kind of all sorts of literature and thought, and then also a whole bunch of bollocks. So, which is why you have, you know, in Secrets of Sex, there's talk about engrams.
Engrams, yes.
Because, yeah.
Very L. Ron Hubbardy stuff.
He was an early Scientologist, wasn't he, Burroughs? And I wouldn't be surprised if you know, he'd be like, Antony, have you heard about this? You know, and he was probably got into it for a little bit. And sorry, I just did the world's worst impression of William S. Burroughs. I didn't prepare for it. I didn't.
I think in Burroughs' private correspondence, he just mentioned that Balch was being processed by the Scientologists in 1968. So yeah, I think it was definitely sort of bit drawn into that.
Yeah,
yeah.
I didn't have a chance to look at. Maybe you obviously did, because I do have the you know, the collected letters or whatever of, but I didn't have a chance to look up if Balch turns up in them. But he does he? If you look up in the index, or
yeah, a couple of times, yeah.
Right, because they met in Paris, right, originally before London, right? I think Balch was.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, it's funny. It's one of those almost peripheral things you find out about that. You hang out with M.S. Burroughs, but you know, the fact that he was the guy entrusted to make these short films, you know, they obviously got along really well, right? They weren't just passing acquaintances, I think.
Yeah, they sort of lived in the same building at one point.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm guessing there's a whole documentary there, really, isn't it? The Balch and Burroughs kind of intersection.
Yeah, it's just a shame there's not many people left around, really, to tell that story. I mean, Burroughs, Richard Gord and Elliot Stein, all these people have passed on.
Yeah. And of course us.
Yes, of course. Yes.
So Secrets of Sex then, aka Bizarre, or Tales of the Bizarre, 1970. Yeah, so I was glad to have a chance to watch this again, actually, because it had been a while, and
it's a good print. The one that I watched was I was impressed by the cleanliness, by the sharpness and brightness of it all. I was expecting to see something that would look a bit grubbier, I think, but it's quite a beautifully shot film.
Yeah. Right out the gate as well, I want to ask Gav, because he might know this. So if you know, the IMDb is obviously awash with errors and stuff, but they specifically credit Cliff Twemlow with the music, right? But then they even get a credit at the beginning of the film that it is the DeWolf Music Library, and as we know, Cliff Twemlow did write. So are there cues here? Are they definitely? Do we know there were things that Cliff Twemlow wrote?
Oh yeah. And that's like, wait a minute. Yeah, it's at the start of the Lindy Lee episode. There's a bit of fanfare from "This Is My City," Cliff Twemlow song from an album.
Okay.
Big City Story. Yeah. So, yeah, there's definitely Cliff Twemlow music here.
But that credit is slightly erroneous. It's not as if it's just a coincidence, right? That they happened. I'm sure there's lots of non-Twemlow DeWolf tracks on there as well, right?
Oh yeah. Just finding stuff on DeWolf. Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't actually, you know, score it.
No, I don't think they pay any direct involved.
Right.
Yeah, that bit of music's not in quite a few places. We also used in the Benny Hill show, and I can't really awful the comedy starring Peter Cushing, Oliver Reed called No Secrets. You've seen that one?
Say that again.
Like it was used in a really awful Peter Cushing film. That's what Oliver Reading called No Secret.
Oh, I don't think I've seen that one. No.
Me neither.
That's some film. Yeah.
Huh.
Lucky people if you've never seen.
If you haven't seen it.
Well, I'm just looking at my notes here as well. I'm trying to figure out which one it was in, whether it was Horror Hospital or Secrets of Sex. But there's a piece of music that I automatically jumped out at me. I didn't realize it was part of the Dewolf library, if that's the case, but recognizable from Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Yes. That also leapt out at me right away. I was like, oh, okay, I know that piece of music.
Was that Horror Hospital or was that this one? I can't remember.
I think it's Horror Hospital.
Okay.
But there's
both Dewolf Music Library films.
Yes. Particularly in Secrets of Sex, they're not shy either because DeWolf takes up the entire screen in like 50-foot high letters. It's like DeWolf. Yeah,
it's nice to see them get the credit because they don't always get it, right? So yeah, that was nice to see. And yeah, so we kick off. I mean, I don't know how much we want to get into, but it's worth mentioning we do quick kick off with a quote from Paradise Lost.
Yes. Yes, and a little menage of two dudes and a lady doing a fandango or whatever in that barn.
Interestingly, that's the exact same Paradise Lost quote that Mary Shelley used in Frankenstein. So I don't know if it is. It may be a reference to Mary Shelley as well. But...
Interesting. The intersection between Mary Shelley and Antony Balch revealed for the first time. So tell us about this mummy then, Gav, because the mummy is kind of important.
Mummy, yeah. Voiced by Valentine Dial, an actor who came to prominence in the radio in the 1940s, playing a character called the Man in Black. I imagine he was probably a childhood icon of Antony Balch, because he was also quite famously obsessed with Bela Lugosi. Yeah, so watched a lot of Bela Lugosi films as a child and dragged his mother around all the sleepies. So Bela Lugosi.
And he met Bela Lugosi, right, when he was brought to England and ended up in that Mother Riley film, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, he sort of was in a sort of stage production of Dracula, and I think Antony Balch's father owned a theatre that was hosting it, so he got to go backstage and meet it.
Well, I was thinking as well, there's the Bella thing is strong with when we get to Horror Hospital as well.
Yes.
Michael Gough and Skip Martin, very similar to Bela Lugosi and Angelo Rossito, right? In the few films they made together. And isn't there similar scenes in Santa Sangre as well, which are kind of Bella and Angelo Rossito kind of callbacks, I suppose. You're both looking at me blank, so I
haven't seen Santa Sangre in many years, so I'm just like, I remember knife throwing. That's about all I remember about Santa Sangre.
Well, it's nothing to do with this. So, but another great film worth watching. Yes. So Valentine Diallo, whatever, how we're pronouncing it. It's interesting. I don't know about the two of you, but for me, it's always been like a name that's been about, but way, way, way before my time. And
well, yes and no, because I primarily know him, as I know far too much, from Doctor Who, where he played the Black Guardian opposite Tom Baker, and then later on opposite somebody else, maybe Peter Davison. But yeah, he had a recurring role as another kind of master type of villainous character.
But
yeah, I think he did a few voiceovers for Hammer, trailers and that.
Okay.
Dubbed Matt Raven in Bust for a Vampire.
Because he's like you said, he was known primarily for the radio, and he was considered the British Vincent Price, right? But in terms of
Also, the voice of the werewolf break in Beast Must Die.
Ah, oh, okay, that's interesting. I haven't seen that in a long time, but because I'm starting now, I think I would probably recognize the voice now. But he's also, what else was he? He was in something. Is he in the no, his voice is the ghost of Hanley Hall or something like that, some obscure old kind of
Did a lot of work with Spike Milligan as well.
right.
He was on the Goons. Yeah, he was on the Goons
Yeah.
show quite a bit, I think.
But it's
A
interesting
lot-
that the horror-y stuff does seem to be related more to radio than anything else, right? Because I think, like I said, we only vaguely know the name Rayleigh, but we don't put him in that bracket as like a Peter Cushing or a Christopher Lee, or because
No,
it seems to have been. It's interesting that his horror persona didn't seem to transfer over so much to the screen, right?
yeah, more of a voice presence rather than.
Yeah. I'm just wondering
Yeah.
why that was, if there was a reason he didn't turn up in, more Amicus films, or, it's kind of interesting that they didn't utilize him in that way.
Mhm.
Yeah,
His last film is Britannia Hospital, which is interesting because one of the funny when I was watching Horror Hospital, it does, because of the Robin Askwith thing, it does bring to mind a little bit some of that Lindsay Anderson weird feel of like of some of those Oh Lucky Man and If and that kind of that stuff.
So what does he look? I'm trying to think. His face doesn't even come to mind. Does he look imposing?
Yeah. I mean, he was great.
Okay.
As I said, I know him from those Doctor Who episodes, and he was terrifying as the Black Guardian.
Right. I was wondering
so
why he didn't, because that's the thing. I was thinking that might be one thing. Like, he has this rich, deep voice, but then he looks like Paul Daniels.
No, he
But-
no, he was a big, craggy faced. Yeah, proper. Yeah, he would have been great, if he had done more. Yeah, in front of the camera stuff.
Odd, isn't it? That's. I'm wondering if there is a reason for that, but maybe he was sick of doing horror stuff or something by that point in his career.
Anyway, he's great as the Mummy, or as the Mummy's voice. Do we know who was actually inside the?
Elliot Stein, yeah.
It's fine.
Pops,
Yeah.
pops up later in the film as the strange young man.
As the lizard lover. Yeah.
We'll get to him because he's quite an interesting little figure as well. But before we do, it is worth mentioning that I do like the fact that this mummy is very caked in soil.
Yeah,
He
looks like a Lucio Fulci, like you could see. Yeah, it's straight out of like Zombie or one of those Euro, yeah, he's properly caked with stuff. Although the one thing I didn't understand is like his origin story, I guess, right? Which is, it opens with him, and he apparently has been cheating, like he's been sleeping with this guy's wife, and then the guy comes in and he's in the box, right? He's hidden himself in a box, and then
where as well? They just say 1,000 years ago, but they don't say where exactly.
Right.
But it looks vaguely Middle Eastern or Arabian Nights Sea or something, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's the judge, right? The judge is the guy who owns this mansion or whatever, and the judge is like, perhaps the trunk contained a woman, a thief, a lover. And I was thinking, like, it's kind of like Schrodinger's cat, it's like
Schrodinger's filthy mummy.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, we won't know until we open it, and then he decides not to open it because this is a curse on my household, and let's go huck it in the sea or bury it, or was it both? Like that, I had trouble parsing that.
Yeah.
So, but the thing I didn't understand is when he comes out as a mummy, when did he get mummified if he was just locked in a box and buried? Did he wrap himself?
She was fucking a mummy, maybe. The thing is, it's intimated, though. To be fair, I mean, they never actually full out make the connection that
Right, it has to be
narrator. But I'm assuming that's who it is. And yes, he's been down there for 1,000 years, so he's been able to observe the endless struggle of the sexes, right, as he puts it. Yeah, I don't know how he's quite seeing all this stuff, but
He's our omniscient mummy narrator.
Yeah.
Balch was kind of quite hung up on this sort of battle of the sexes sort of theme. I mean, it sort of bleeds over into a lot of the films he distributed, like Super Vixen, Mama's Dirty Girls, and films, sort of films which relations between men and women usually like spill over into violence and death. And
well, according to this, he had a very contentious relationship with his mum. So whether or not, in fact, he was kind of terrified of her, and you know, would take pains to make sure he was properly shaved and stuff before he went to see her, and it did, you know, she was very, didn't want to risk her cutting tongue or whatever. So whether or not that factors into his.
Apparently, he likes to claim that when his mother gave birth to him, she lost her ability to sing. She was like a sort of in reviews and magical reviews and things like that. So after giving birth to him, she sort of became a sort of like an extra in films, and I think it was a stand for Dame Edith Evans as well. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And of course, she's in this.
Yeah, old woman with lizard.
Delta Balch. It's a great name, that is, Delta Balch.
Yeah,
unusual name.
Yeah. Yeah. So, after a very kind of, to be honest, kind of grim striptease scene.
Yes, yeah. I have written down world's most lugubrious striptease, complete with funereal church pipe organ music.
Right.
WTF? ?
And
that's a weird striptease.
A naked hippie reading Nova Express, getting back to William S. Burroughs again.
Yep. Looking like he's come straight out of like doing a gig with the MC5, which is
he does look
dope guns
John Sinclair, doesn't he?
yeah, dope guns and fucking in the street with the rifles and stuff. Yeah.
And there's that long montage of yes, imagine this boy making love to you. Imagine this girl making this goes on, and you do have to wonder if Valentine Jal was thinking, how long does this go on, Antony?
Well, that's where it becomes like an art film to me, or like an art film / a comedy, like where you push it so far where you're like, it's getting frustrating, and then it almost becomes funny again just by the commitment to doing it for so long. So yes, I kind of enjoyed that.
And then when it segues into this bit, revenge is the only answer.
Oh, yes.
Where like some women are kind of dancing about, and obviously the intimation here is like, well, you know, if you tease men and you don't give them anything, then they'll become, you know, and then gets very incel-y, right? Because dudes turn up with guns. It's
It's funny that, you know, there's this whole part where he's talking about like right before he gets it, he's like, the promise of paradise becomes a torture chamber. So this like the sexual frustration and the lack of ability to kind of make things happen, you know, like it's this double-edged sword. And then yes, the provocation cannot last forever. Revenge becomes the only answer. And then we get the guys with the Tommy guns and the girls. Yeah, I was like, wow, they're really letting it all hang out. The Battle of the Sexes played really straight, like really. And then is that before or after? Then we get the scene of all the strippers being suddenly pelted with rotten tomatoes and lettuce.
Because it gets progressively more violent, right? First they get pelted, and then automatic weapons are introduced to the.
So I possibly shouldn't out myself for saying that I found the ladies getting pelted with tomatoes absolutely erotically riveting. I was like, yep, the movie has me now.
Imagine yourself with this girl making love to this girl.
With this cabbage. Weird. weird and wonderful. That whole opening is just, yeah, great stuff.
So I suppose the first proper, like, non-rumbling-y, if this was an anthology, I suppose the first proper section is the photo shoot, right, with the Spanish horse.
Yes, and it's the first section that's not narrated to us. Up until this point, everything we've seen has been just without dialogue, and it's just been narrated by the mummy. And suddenly we have characters actually speaking in that section.
So do we have any sense of how cobbled together from bits and pieces or planned out in advance this was? Because I wouldn't be surprised either way. I was watching this and I was thinking, this is either like precisely what Antony Balch wanted to do, or it's like bits like from the cutting room floor just swept into
dog ends.
Yeah. What do we think?
I did think the same thing, but I have a sneaking suspicion that it was a plan, like that it was scripted and written out, and like, yep, first this, then we're going to shoot this, then this is going to happen.
I think it was very sort of unplanned and sort of improvised and thrown together. Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting considering his history with Burroughs. I'm wondering if the cut-ups were maybe an influence on the way the script was put. Like somehow he had some random things, and then he just wrote some, just connecting narration. And
the last sequence, the greenhouse one, sort of that was very sort of written on the fly. I think it was originally meant to be set, like an episode setting about men's barbers or something, and he changed it at the last minute, and that was. So I think that one particularly was sort of thrown together at the last minute. So,
Mom, can I shoot in your greenhouse? Only if there's a part in it for me.
So yeah, this is the first time we hear about engrams is in this part with the so we have the sadistic photographer and the masochistic or just a guy who needs a job who's shown up to be her male model.
It's an odd one. It's like it I can imagine it in a more traditional Amicus anthology or something, this bit. They just leave him there, and the intercutting of him struggling with people cutting open a steak, and it's quite that stuff doesn't always work, or it seems a bit, but in this case it does seem quite. It does. You can imagine him squirming and his bollocks being cut to pieces on that Spanish horse, but then there's, I don't know, it's an odd, because it's like what the payoff's going to be, and you think there's going to be an extra little, in the way of a Amicus anthology or something, there'll be a little twist at the end where, I don't know, it'll be just something like the pictures will end up in a magazine, or it'll be revealed or something, but it's not. It's just dead. That's it.
Yeah, I think the original idea was that he would be seen as like an old man, and like his soul had been taken away, and that like grey hair and sort of old features. But the makeup didn't work apparently, so they just killed him off.
Okay, so like his life force had been stolen, as we know, women do. Okay, interesting.
What I was surprised is they didn't have, because the way the story was playing out, I thought it was going to be like one of those like Teroishi kind of films where it was like an artist was torturing models so he could get just the right face to do the tattoo or something. So I thought that the final shot would be of his grimacing or something, and there we go. But you didn't even get that. They just cut him down, and
originally that sequence was heavily cut by the British censor. Now they cut off the entire ending of it, so it probably made even less sense when it originally went out. Yeah.
They just went out and had lunch. It ended. Huh.
Nothing. No payoff at all. Apparently, original British release.
The cut version was what, 70 minutes or something? So that's a good 20 minutes.
About 9 minutes, probably.
Okay. Yeah,
I had a list of cuts somewhere, but it's like everything was cut. Everything of interest was cut or reduced down in some way. Yeah.
But he himself apparently, right? Because it says in this book that he himself cut a version of it that was 30 minutes, and it's no longer extant. Nobody can find where it is, but that he apparently shows his favorite parts of the film, and it was re-released it as this half an hour.
Done in 1977, I think. It's like a half-hour.
Yeah, I'd love to know what he kept, like what he was like, what was essential, you know.
Yeah.
No, I suspect that would probably play really well, actually. Like a 30-minute Secrets of Sex is probably what it should be, I think. Like a really tight, you know, just.
Well, I've heard that. I've heard that version may cut entirely out the Lindy Lee section. But I mean, maybe that felt a bit dated for 1977. It does feel like very late 60s.
Right, and it's one of the few that doesn't really have much of a horror vibe at all. It's much more light, you know, spoofy. Whereas most of the others have an edge of the weird or the uncomfortable in them.
Right.
I was mostly disturbed by her putting out that cigarette in her tea.
Well, it's not a cigarette, it's like a cigarillo, isn't it? It's
right.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely could have cut out in the Lindy Lee stickers when we get to it, but the silent movie.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, there's a lot of, I enjoy this film quite a bit, but yeah, I mean, this scene, for instance, it all goes on too long, really, isn't it? I mean, if you're going to be object. So after that, there's this maybe the most out of step sequence with the entire film, I think.
I keep thinking somebody goes, you know, a proper raincoat kind of, you know, gent shows up to watch this in a and he's like, what am I supposed to do with this? There's nothing in any way erotic or titillating. It's just a depressing, grim horror, Cronenberg-y kind of horror story.
Like, you're thinking when the film starts, the whole film starts, and you've got the naked chick in the hayloft. She's like, here we go, unzip, you know, this is going to be fun. And then, just gives up, like, with a limp noodle, like, and then every now and again, the Lindy Lee, oh, here we go, Mario Frost's on all fours, I'll do it. But then there's not too much of that, and very disgruntled man leaving. Just fucking Antony Balch.
But that segment it's effectively disturbing, particularly the last shot we see of the Belial, you know, mutant baby thing that she has with the kind of distorted, like, with its little eye. I was Jesus.
That's on the poster, isn't it? Or one of the posters, I think, that face.
Yeah.
Which is, it's a shame it's too brief, really. I'd like to see more of that, because it looks proper freaky. Plus, it looks like it might grow up to be the Michael Gough character from
from Our Hospital. Yeah, I was thinking that as well. A bit like a chewed gum callus.
Yeah.
But yes. Anyway, that segment's just it's good. It's good as a little. I could see it as like a Tales from the Crypt kind of a 30-minute episode or whatever, you know. But it's just, I don't know why it's in the middle of a movie that ostensibly is supposed to be titillating in some way. Anyway. God, yeah, when she's giving birth and they suddenly cut to that scene of like what looks like rubber gloves being pulled out of like a sea of blood. I was like, yeah. Very disturbing.
And of course, Kenneth Bender is in this as well. He's also in Horror Hospital. Not a man I know a lot about, but I enjoy him in both of these films. He's got a look about him, isn't he? Does Kenneth Bender?
I'm surprised he never really became a sort of horror film star. He's never sort of Boris Karloff type quality thing.
Right.
No one other than Antony Balch seems to have seen him in that light, apart from he's briefly in Scream and Scream Again.
Okay.
But those are his only horror credit. But mostly played judges in typical TV shows.
He looks like someone would have been really well used if Jess Franco had got a hold of him. He's got that kind of he's very a strong presence in both of these films, and it made me think, oh, why don't I know him? And then looked him up and assumed, and like you said, it's just bits and pieces, authority figures, and seems like they wasted him a little bit. He could have been. He reminded me a little bit as well of what's his name from? Is it Donald Wolfett, the guy from? I can never remember what the title exactly is. It yeah, because he's got that bushy eyebrowdy thing going on, and he's got a bit of that about him. But yes, so to calm down after the muted baby deformed chewing gum thing.
We get an attempt at a sex segment of the film.
Yeah, this seems like something a bit more like out of a Confessions or an Adventures of, right? This is the female burglar, as played by the lovely Kathy Howard, who isn't in enough things as well. She's in Tower of Evil, right? I believe.
Twins of Evil. The Hammer film. Not in that many films. It's like in a couple of films, but just in a very brief amount of time. I don't really know that much about her, to be honest.
No, but she's a striking woman. Very good. Oh yeah, sorry, you're right. I not Tower of Evil, Twins of Evil. She's in, isn't it? Yeah.
Like sacrificed on an altar.
Right. I don't remember if she provides nudity or not.
I don't think so. But she mostly provides nudity in the film she did. But a lot of the women in this film come from like a nude modelling background, but I've never been able to find any information on years that she did.
No, I mean, there's other people. Obviously, there's like Maria Frost, for example, and Sue Bond. They might not necessarily have that many credits, but outside of that, they did a lot of pictorial work for magazines. But Kathy Howard, because she looks as if she would have got lots of work, right?
Yeah, but I can't. Nobody else to find any sort of.
No.
A lot of the people in this film, like Maria Frost, Nicola Austin, they all had like extensive like new modelling.
Yeah.
Nobody else to find Kathy Howard.
But is this that's actually something I don't know? Is there an online resource for that? Like you have the Internet Movie Database. Is there like a place you can go and you type in someone's name and they'll tell you all the magazine articles that they turned up in photo shoots for or anything like that?
I'm not aware of it, but I've tried to actually Google a name a few times, but never come up with it.
Yeah, that would be good. You could find out exactly how which issues of Mayfair or someone should get to that. Someone should put together a database.
I know a bit about the guy who's in this segment, Mike Britton. He's in a couple of films. He's also like modelling for print ads. He's in adverts for Smirnoff in the 70s.
Oh, okay.
And well, he's sort of in this film. He's sort of playing a married man who's tempted by another woman. And, he's acting from experience there, because in real life he's a married guy, and he had a bit on the side, an actress model called Maxine Casson, who also appeared in a movie like this, one of the Confessions films. He likes to refer to her as his side chick. And the last anyone's ever heard of Mike, years ago in the 80s, he was working as a manager in a sports centre. Had a bit on the side beyond that as well. So. And really interesting thing about Mike Britton is when he was making these sex films, he also had a day job. He was a crew member on Top of the Pops.
Oh.
Yeah, so he would like work crowd control. During like the camera run through, the real band generally didn't turn up, so he would like play the drum, double the drummer so they could work out camera placement, things like that. But he eventually got sacked from this because the Top of the Pops got this new floor manager who was a tough, snob, and he took like an instant dislike to Mike and a couple of the other guys who worked on Top of the Pops because they were from like working class background. But anyway, this guy, floor manager guy, he must have been to porn or something. So he possibly like saw a film with Mike in, or like a magazine that had stills from films that Mike was in. So he used that as leverage to get him and a couple of the other guys from Top of the Pops crew sacked from the program for bringing into disrepute by appearing in films like this.
Wow.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense, though. Those are both very exploitable job positions, right? Floor manager on the Pops and leisure center manager. I mean, you can just see the cogs and the brain whirring. Like, what are the added benefits of these two jobs, I wonder?
But of course, the irony is it's probably the same sort of period where Top of the Pops were probably turning a blind eye to, or concealing, the exploits of the dreaded Jimmy Savile.
Oh yeah, and then Gary as well. I'm sure is in his element at that point as well. Yeah, those creeps.
In Secrets of Sex, you can see Mike Britton doing what got you fired from Top of the Pops back then.
So basically, in this segment, right, the girl, she's a cat burglar or whatever. She breaks into his place, steals some stuff.
Christ,
they make
a bird.
Yeah, great piece of dialogue there. he unmasks her. She's got a stocking mask on. Yes, and then she makes a deal with him to sleep with him. What's weird about that scene is all the cutaways to like jets.
Yeah, well,
roaring.
Not just the cutaways, it's introduced as well. Like, let us go to a field which is circled by planes. And I'm thinking, what is the relevant? I mean, is this supposed to be is this supposed to be like Slough or something? Or is it I couldn't figure the connection between them. And because the whole thing plays out, obviously it's supposed to be funny. There's the radio spot, and then there's the thing with the phone, and none of it's actually funny, really. But it goes on for fucking ages, and it goes back to the planes. And I couldn't figure out. Do we know what the idea was yet?
I was surprised to discover that the shots of the planes that was all specially done for the film. It wasn't like stock footage or anything like that. It actually got onto like a runway and got permission to shoot all these shots.
Wow.
So it was really important to them, clearly, to have those. They went out of their way to shoot those scenes to cut into that segment. But there was one part that made me laugh was when they head into the bath to have their little shower escapade. Is that he takes off a pair of underpants to reveal a second pair of underpants that he's wearing under the first pair. I was like, what?
And also, what the fuck is that horrible soap? Cucumber cake soap or something?
Yes.
It almost becomes like a parody of like a TV advert, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think had a background shooting TV advert for Antony Balch, so maybe it was.
I mean, maybe some of the gags land a bit better if it's 1970 as well, right? Like they might be specifically referencing some forgotten media or something that we're just not. Maybe it would have brought the proof down in its.
I think there's a few sort of in jokes in that sort of radio broadcast as well. I think one.
Lots.
Antonia Garden.
But then, disappointingly, just when I was thinking it's going to get really good because a whip comes out, and I want to see Cathy Howard being whipped, but it doesn't happen. So my dreams were crushed.
No, to be honest, that whole sex scene was really awkward. I mean, the phone aside, just like everything, and then I was just reminded of like why in the 70s, and it's across the board, but it's especially in English sex films of the 70s. do they assume I want to spend a lot of time looking at a man's hairy bum? Because this is definitely an issue with the other Robin Askwith, the Timmy Lee films and that stuff. But then I did remember the director. I was like, oh, hang on, okay, maybe this isn't for me. maybe this is for another audience. But yeah, I was just like, man, I'm seeing a lot of his arse, and would have preferred to see hers maybe. But yes. Anyway, so yes, that scene ends. It's it almost feels like, I wrote that down actually in that segment when they kept cutting to the plane. It feels like a really strange, like Monty Python film. And then we brought up the fact that the music actually from but it was like, like The Meaning of Sex or whatever. Like this weird, these disconnected scenes, and then this kind of humorous but awkward and weird. Is it art? What is it?
So yeah, we get to the Lindy Lee sequence, which, as we discovered, because Gav was kind enough to share with us the original Mayfair strip by what's his name, Alfred Mazur. Right? Looking up Alfred Mazur, actually, there seemed to have been a bit more to him than these Mayfair sketches, right? Like he seems to have been quite an interesting dude as well, who I'd never heard of before. Kids comics and like not specifically the erotic stuff, just came towards the end of his career, I think, right? That's fine.
Yeah. It sort of came to Britain and became involved in sort of the Jane comic sort of thing. I think the sort of Mayfair snapped him up. It's sort of Lindy Lee, sort of 60s version of Jane. Carnaby Street, communist, Czech spies, and stuff like that.
Quite a nice, sexy little comic, and very faithful adaptation, surprisingly, right?
Yeah. I was surprised how sort of most of the dialogue is from the comic.
Yeah,
sort of a lot of the imagery. Yeah.
It's quite a fun little. It did remind me a lot of that seduced milkman sketch from Monty Python, if you remember that one.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought that, yeah.
Very similar.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, there's a great line in there where somebody says, I don't know who it says, I just wrote the line down, but it says, breasts like resilient sand dunes. I was like, that's a nice piece of writing. I don't know if that was in the comic, or was that something that was just written for that. Anyway.
Yeah. And then, yes, Elliot Stein. We get Elliot Stein as this strange young man. So yeah, Elliot Stein, a film critic, right? An American film critic, who was in some things. The reason I knew him was he was involved. I think he wrote the original story for. There's a film from 1978 called New York City Inferno, which is like a French gay hardcore film about this French guy who, he goes to New York and it's. Have either of you seen New York City Inferno?
No, I haven't.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's parts of it they're straight out of Cruising. I mean, it's some of it is a lot of glory holes and pre-AIDS, letting it all hang out leather club stuff, which is just awesome. I mean, you don't have to necessarily be using it as an utility. It works like a
time capsule.
Yeah, like a Mondo film.
Right.
I highly recommend New York City Inferno. I really, really enjoy it. And surprisingly, New York City Inferno has a soundtrack which was done for the film by none other than the Village People.
Really? They scored a gay porn film. Well, okay. I mean, actually, it's not as big a stretch as
when you say it out loud, it's, actually, that's not that surprising. The old gag, why are all these guys hanging out together in India and a fireman? Yeah. Yeah, but yeah. So But Elliot Stein is the what is it a Pangalia? Is it that lizard it's called?
Pangolin, yeah, whatever it is.
Pangolin.
Pangy.
Yeah.
Yeah, peace, Pangy, peace and love. Yeah, he's the only guy who'll be running around in Jurassic Park with a hard on while everything else is going on.
I don't know if Elliot Stein thought himself as like had any serious acting ambitions. I think he was more here as a sort of out of friendship to Antony Balch, really. He was like a close friend of his. Also a massive horror fan, apparently.
Yeah.
He was like one of the early champions of Night of the Living Dead.
Oh, okay.
He also wrote a piece about the original King Kong, Rolling Stone magazine. That's apparently held in quite high regard by.
Okay. Have you read any of his stuff?
No.
Because he seems like the way I've heard him read, like people talk about him as a in the, like a similar way to like people talk about the way like Lester Bangs wrote about music or something like that. Like he seems to have been a very, like you said, a very early clued in dude. But I don't, as far as I know, his stuff's never like been collected into a anthology or anything, or
Have you ever seen a documentary from 2002 called Cinemania?
No.
It's kind of about a group of like obsessed film goers in what's like the New York City area and all these like repertory houses that they go to. And Elliot Stein makes a brief, uncredited, but very memorable for all the wrong reasons appearance in that. But the backstory is that he'd gone out for Elliot Stein had gone out for a big meal and then decided to follow that by going to see like an old movie, one of these rep houses, where they've like filmed this documentary about people go to these places. Well, anyway, because he'd had a big meal of that, he decided to like loosen his pants belt. Now, all they show you in this documentary, though, is like the end credits of this film rolling, and they like cut to the audience, and you suddenly see like Elliot Stein like passing his pants back up, and it does give the false impression that he's so he wasn't too pleased with that.
Wow. So do we know if that's his real voice? Because he does do the kind of nebbish, thing pretty well.
Yeah, I thought he was quite funny in this film, actually. Like when he's on the phone trying to get the girl for the evening. I thought all that was quite amusing and clearly ad-libbed. Right? Yeah. Like when you ask age, well, I'm 24. Like, that's quite funny. And an odd sequence. Who had this idea? And the whole when he goes out to the park and there's the dinosaur statue thing, and it's one of the few, like some of the other sequences, like you get what they're going for and it might not work, but you at least understand what they were going for. I don't know what the fuck they were thinking with this. Very, very strange, but it is one of the more memorable. It's the bit of the film I remembered most from seeing it before. So that's kind of that's so what did we make of Secrets of Sex then, gentlemen?
Well, it is worth mentioning the that last greenhouse segment, because it's also basically what this
ties it up a bit, doesn't it? A little.
Yes, yeah. And this woman who's somehow being like stealing men's souls or something, right? At the moment of climax, or this whole thing about like how you can, I don't know, the mechanics of it all were a bit mystifying to me. But I do love the fact that as he's murdering her, he shouts, "Misappropriation of men's souls is a very serious crime."
What they call filthy alien garbage heap.
Yes.
Oh yes, that's a good line.
But that all seems very L. Ron Hubbardy to me, actually. That's another segment.
I think that's very Scientology sort coming into play there.
Delta write something nice for me, Antony. Write me a nice line.
Although I think didn't Burroughs sort of have a falling out with the Scientology people around about 1970, I think. became quite critical.
Well, I mean, for one thing, that my understanding is that as time went on, they were increasingly kind of anti-gay, right? And wasn't am I wrong in thinking L. Ron Hubbard's one of his sons was gay and then was kind of browbeat and ended up, yeah.
Yes.
My understanding is anyway, they weren't very friendly in that way. So yeah, why would you hang out with people who don't like you?
Yes, absolutely. I wonder if, like, the fact that the character in this film is espousing, Scientology beliefs, then gets strangled and declared as an alien garbage heap. Maybe a sign that all wasn't too well between, Balch and the Scientology.
I suppose this is the kind of film you would get as well if you think about if Scientology were to make an erotic anthology film, it might end up looking a bit like this.
Battlefield sex.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I have to say I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think the fact
You
that
don't
it
allowed
wasn't.
to say that anymore, Nick.
Oh yes, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm banned
You're
from
not-
saying I thoroughly enjoyed things. But okay, I like the fact that it was an anthology because nothing really fully outstayed its welcome, right? If there was anything that was draggy in any way, you were like, well, you were pretty quickly onto something else. And
Yes,
I thought some of the segments were great. Some of the girls were very cute.
Yeah, I don't know about quickly onto something else, but onto something else in a little while.
And the mummy was great.
The mummy makes it all work. I think that's the stroke of genius here. Is they had a hot fucking mess, and then what I know, let's get a mummy covered in soil.
To do linking narration.
Yeah, that'll do it. I will get that DL guy to do it.
Well, apparently the mummy costume was so elaborate that they couldn't let Elliot Stein out of it in between shooting the film. So he had to be during the break he had stumble around London streets and ended up in a pub and had to have beer, drink beer from a straw whilst it's called the mummy costume.
I'd love to see a photograph of that.
Yeah. Well, I'm just wondering, how much shooting did he actually? I mean, did they just film him just moving about a bit for an hour? We've probably got enough of you just moving about a bit now, or yeah, I'm not quite sure how you judge if you've got enough. I'll tell you what he also looks like is he also looks like is it the 8th or the 7th? There's one of the Pan Book of Horror Stories covers that looks just like him, the mummy from this film. Right. So thoughts, Gav? I mean, obviously you brought this to us. What were you thinking?
Well, apparently Balch himself thought it was a very uneven film, and he liked the Spanish horse sequence, the strange young man sequence, and the lady in the greenhouse episode. Felt the monster baby segment was a bore, like the shot of the creature at the end. He thought was brilliant, but it is a bit of a mess. I mean, again, it's the first time director making a lot of rookie mistakes. It's not striking though. I mean, if you think about a lot of the sort of anthology themed sort of sex films, there's usually a couple of segments you don't remember from. But whereas in this one, I think even though not everything works, you do remember a lot of every particular segment.
Oh yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. It's a fucking mess, but I've seen it twice before. I'll probably watch it at least twice another time. 2 times. I imagine, because it does have something about it that keeps pulling me back. And like I said, I've yet to hear the commentary, so that's at least one more excuse to watch it again. But it's definitely a fascinating relic, and I can't think of anything else quite like it.
No, I guess Radley Metzger must have been a fan of it because clips from it sort of appeared in his 1975 film, Naked Came the Stranger, one of his hardcore movies.
Oh, okay.
And they opening sequence of that, you see Secrets of Sex playing on the television. So,
Oh,
clips,
okay.
yeah, they show clips from the photographer section, and then some of the audio from the greenhouse section of the filthy alien garbage heap. I guess it must have met with Bradley Metzger's seal of approval to end up in one of his films.
Hmm.
Yeah, I've not seen Naked Kim the Stranger.
Yeah, I've seen the Licorice Quartet. I've seen a couple of, and then I've seen you know, the opening of Missy Beethoven and stuff that he used his other name for. But yeah, I always like me some Metzger.
It's an anthology as well.
I'm not sure.
Because I just looked it up. Interestingly, if it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 of the writing credits are for novels that it's based on. So it seems like quite a literary hardcore film. So I'm wondering if it might be an anthology as well. In fact, you might be onto something that might be a direct. It might have been directly influenced by Secrets of Sex.
Well, Richard Gordon, the producer of Secrets of Sex, did work with Metzger a couple of years later on the Cat and the Canary. So I guess they must have.
Yeah. There's no reviews of it on IMDb at all. Not one person has reviewed it. I don't know actually how. Is this easy to find film or?
I think it was on YouTube for a while, but it's gone now.
I think we may have found a candidate.
Yep.
If you fancy coming back on again, Gav, to talk Naked Came the Stranger with us.
Yes, yeah. I have a few the places where I go if it's not easily found. I can probably find us a copy. So
okay, anyway, that's for the film. Yeah. Before then, we still have our second part of this to plow through.
Yes. Horror Hospital. All right. So maybe Gav, can you set us up again, explaining how do we get from Secrets of Sex to Horror Hospital?
Well, Horror Hospital wasn't meant to be second film, what you should say. After Secrets of Sex, it was meant to have made a movie adaptation of The Naked Lunch of William Burroughs book.
Right, yeah.
There was some sort of movement on that in sort of May 1971 when Mick Jagger expressed an interest in playing the lead role, and sort of led to a meeting between Jagger, Balch, and Burroughs. It was apparently a bit of a disaster. Jagger wanted a big name director for the film. Took an instant dislike to Antony Balch.
No offense, Anthony, but that mummy film you made was shit.
But apparently Jagger showed up to the meeting wearing like very tight trousers, and Antony Balch, being Antony Balch, made some inappropriate comment about this, and that sort of instantly got them off on their own foot. So that sort of ended up in Horror Hospital, really. That sort of scene where Dennis Price and Robin Askwith.
Oh yeah.
That's apparently what happened when Antony Balch met Mick Jagger.
That's hellish. But Mick Jagger was all. I mean, there was also wasn't he involved in an early version that was going to start all the Rolling Stones in A Clockwork Orange. And then thankfully that didn't happen. It ended
also, up Fitzcarraldo, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that obviously falls apart, and then how do we get to Horror Hospital?
So we ended up making Horror Hospital instead. So.
AKA Computer Killers, AKA Dr. Bloodbath, and Madhouse in France, right? I think.
Yeah. I think Hallmark picked it up in the States. Also released Last House on the Left, The Devil. They had a couple of titles for it. The strangest one is East World, they called it. Tried to make it out as it was like a sequel to West World.
Wow. Well,
Huh.
that's interesting. I mean, how obviously the computer killers and the Eastworld both seem to point at something computery going on in this film, which totally
Science fiction-y, yeah.
which didn't
It's like,
is any other motorcycle. Are they supposed to be androids or something? I don't know.
I think it's a computer in that 2 seconds.
Yeah, no, it's I always wondered about that AKA, like if it was one of those things where was it pre-sold or something, and like the original script had some science fiction element or something which didn't end up in the final film, but it ended up with this weird AKA.
I mean,
or
I suppose he is sort of programming them, but he's doing it through like, you know, prefrontal lobotomy. He's not. There's no computers involved, but he is kind of programming the people that he's dicking with their heads, right? So, but yeah,
Well,
computers.
apparently, apparently Antony Balch and the other writer, Alan Watson, sort of came up with the title Horror Hospital. So they came up with the actual plot. I mean, I suppose it's more of a horror health farm, really. But,
Right. Yes.
yeah.
But I think the line in it where Robin Askwith says something like, "This place is more like a hospital than a health farm." Something, but that explains the title.
We better write something in, otherwise people are going to be confused.
Alan Watson, of course, who appears as the band Mystic, right?
The guy in drag, yeah.
Which is actually the band Tangerine Peel, which is such a great. It's kind of like if they did a Ruttles for krautrock, right? Instead of Tangerine Dream, you'd have Tangerine Peel. I did actually listen to the Tangerine Peel Soft Delights album from the same, from 1970, a few years before this, 73. If you have heard Tangerine Peel, but they're not very good, really. There's a couple of tracks on it, but
they didn't come across as particularly strong in the film either, to be honest. But yeah, okay. So yeah, I have to admit, I have never seen this before. Although I think, Clive, over the years you've brought it up a few times, but this was actually also a first view for me, and so I was very excited. Particularly, this has a great opening, right?
Yes.
We're slammed right into, Michael Gough, who sadly I mostly know from those stupid Batman films that he did,
and the Pepsi commercials as well.
And yes, the Diet Pepsi commercials. Though I know he goes, back to the 50s and 60s, and has done
Horrors of the Museum and Conga, and no, Michael Gough's always. The one thing that struck me this time, which I'd never considered before, was how much he reminds me of Billy Drago.
Okay.
Every now and again, there's a little bit of Billy Drago in his face, I think, which is something I'd never clocked before. Fans of both of them, but What a shame they never did a film together. Gough and Drago. That would
but I did, obviously the whole opening part with the big black car with the spring-mounted blades that shoot out from the sides, and I couldn't quite figure out the mechanics of how it kept decapitating people when are they all falling. Just a moment before.
Also, it seems to come out at about waist level. Right?
That's what I said. Like, so is everyone just tripping just seconds before the car passes them so it can get their heads?
Yeah. To be fair, the film peaks early, really, because that's kind of the best thing. That's what I remember of the film, the decapitating car.
The head flips into the thing, and then we cut to
ironically, most of danger you'd think would be Skip Martin, right? Because he's about the
yes, exactly. So it's great when he pokes the head too at that in that opening segment. But I also did think it was a bit like Chekhov's gun, like it was like if you have a decapitating car in the first scene, you better make sure that thing shows up in the third act.
Right.
But
I thought that was Alan Watson's idea, that decapitating. Yeah, we can thank you for that.
It's a great gimmick. It definitely, right away, I'm like, you're in for a good time.
I wonder if Tangerine Peel ever wrote a song, Decapitating Car, or... Yeah. Yes. So, and then we get into the meat of it. So, yeah, our beloved Robin Askwith is pissed off because he's written a song for Mystic. They've stolen it, I guess, or they're not acknowledging it.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I was getting the feeling of this. I mean, they don't really go into it, but I was imagining this was like Pink Fairies, Hawkwind era, Ladbroke Grove, or something like that. That he was escaping from. I was imagining that that's the kind of scene that we're in.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
And Antony Balch has a little cameo here as well, doesn't he? A bearded Balch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cocaine Joe. Yeah.
Yeah. Robin Askwith needs a holiday, so he goes to sees an ad and he goes to hairy holidays.
Because he feels like something a little hairy. So I did want to just get ahead of this and just say that. So the thing that struck me about Askwith is it's a little bit like, in fact, there's lots and lots of actors who are kind of like this. Who one that springs to mind for some reason for me is Terence Hill. You go back and you watch the films that Terence Hill made before he did Trinity, and you're like, oh shit, he had quite a decent range, and he could do like angry, as soon as he gets cast in this comedy, easygoing thing, that's all he does the rest of his career, and you're like, oh, you know what? He was more than that. He was better than that. And I kind of feel like with Askwith, he's a little bit better than he gets later on. Like when you go back to If, or you go back to to even this, right? You're like, oh, he has a bit more range before we get to Timmy Lee, and then it's almost kind of that.
I mean, before he does this. Oh, yeah, yes,
yeah, exactly.
Which he doesn't do at all in this.
Yes, yeah.
I suppose it's a bit more rock and roll in Hospital. He gets to swear a lot here. Smoky Joy, Mungo, Jenny Stein.
Yeah, and do more action.
Bit more like squeaky clean sort of boy next door sort of makeover for Confessions of a Windy Clean.
Yeah, so he goes and gets his hairy holiday from the wonderful Dennis Price.
That's a great close-up of Askwith's balls as you poured into those pants, which now makes sense if it was a reference to Dagger.
So this is another film another we were talking about Kenneth Bender earlier and Valentine DL. Dennis Price this is apparently the last film he shot right before he died. And what do either of you know? Because I only know Dennis Price pretty much as he turns up in a whole bunch of Jess Franco films, and then prior to that he obviously had a career. But I don't really know what Dennis Price, because this is clearly post Franco Dennis Price, right? Like, what was he like? Was he a very kind of well-respected thespian who torched his career by being in a bunch of trash, or what do we know about Dennis Price? Because I don't really know about him.
Yeah, I mostly know from like the latter day stuff, really. The sort of special guest star in horror films that sort of ended the end of his career, really. Yeah.
So it does look like it says in '67 he was declared bankrupt. He attributed his financial distress to extravagant living and the most inadequate gambling. He then moved to the tax haven island of Sark, which coincided with an escalation of his alcoholism. So I'm going to guess that little nexus of evil was probably it's because apparently he was in a very well considered version of Jeeves and Wooster on the BBC, where he played Jeeves.
Wow.
And it's still considered to be. And he was in tons. He was in lots of Noel Coward, and he was in Blithe Spirit. It seems like he was in lots of. Yeah, and then obviously the drinking and he was bisexual apparently. And so that kind of maybe this whole milieu was, you know.
I think there's always a bit of a mystery of what his last film actually was. I think possibly it was a film called Son of Dracula. Have you ever seen that one?
Ah, right.
Ringo
Yes.
Starr. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Another classic.
Yeah. Possibly a good film to be in if you had a love affair going with the old demon alcohol.
Yeah. So clearly, Dennis Price, a man who enjoyed life, right?
Yes.
And good for him. I mean, you can tell. You can tell he's enjoying himself.
Oh yeah. He's great. Yeah.
So
he sends off
to the
country, obviously
just the country. We don't know where it is. It's just this nebulous place that isn't the city, right? It's just somewhere in the country. For under 30s as well, it's worth pointing out. It has to be for under 30s, right? He meets the very attractive Vanessa Shaw.
So this on the train. So this immediately brought me back to what Diversions. Particularly when she offered him an apple.
Yeah.
But
yes. But it's fine. It's not diversion. She's not in any trouble at all because he's quick to reassure her with the line, "I'm not going to rape you," which I'm sure that calms any woman down. It's like, thank God for that. It was.
Yeah. And she's like then immediately sharing like the most embarrassing aspects of her life, such as the fact that she's been born illegitimate and I hadn't used to run a brothel and I hadn't hooked up with this mad doctor who's in with the Russians.
Yes. I suspect this scene though. I suspect the tongue-in-cheekness of Antony Balch, right? Because she does add the line, "Oh, isn't it funny how you can tell a stranger everything?" And I think that's like Balch being very self-aware of just like the exposition at play here, right?
Yeah.
Her real name was Phoebe Shaw, but apparently Richard Gardner, producer, asked that changed to Vanessa. So Phoebe was a sort of old-fashioned name as an actress. Right? I don't know. I can't think of that many actresses since who've been called Phoebe, so I don't know. Maybe
no Phoebe Cates.
But I can think of Phoebe Cates, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, and I think the one from the Toxic Avenger sequel called Phoebe. But that's about it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe Richard Gardner was onto something there.
Not in much else, right, Vanessa Shaw, unfortunately.
No. This is only really significant role.
And she's good too. And cute, so.
Yeah.
So they're off to Brittlehurst Manor.
Right.
Is where the action pretty much takes place for the rest of the film, right? And then almost immediately those two fellas with the white crash motorcycle crash helmets and leather suits show up.
Yeah. That's Medworth House, I think. It's like a lot of films have been shot there.
Okay, yeah, I wondered because it's obviously like it's a beautiful and real location, right? It's obviously not a set.
Yeah. I think the Batman films used it as well as Wayne Manor in 1980.
Oh,
yeah. So.
Okay, so Michael Gough was pretty comfortable in there, I'm guessing then.
Yeah, and I think there's an episode of a program called The Adventure, which also has Dennis Price. So it's all connected. All very connected.
Those bikers as well with those cool black and white helmets, very Psychomania kind of look to them. So put me in mind of that. And
then Skip.
Yeah.
We have to.
Martin, yeah.
Yeah, because I really feel like again, so I had to dig in and look at a little, and obviously he has done several other things, which I'm embarrassed to admit I haven't seen, like Vampire Circus and things like that, which I haven't seen. And should I?
Yeah. I mean,
okay.
You should probably see. I mean, it's not. Okay. It's been a while. Any thoughts on Vampire Circus, Gav?
Yeah, I saw that a while back. It's fairly decent. Yeah.
Okay.
Nothing else.
But I really liked Skip. He really struck me as adding a lot of value to this film. And in fact, I was surprised by the amount of screen time he gets. For often actors who are little people can tend to get, he's not just doing comedy, or he's not, he's got a lot to do. He has lengthy chunks of time that he's just pretty much the only person on camera.
Yeah. In terms of screen time, he certainly wasn't short-changed.
No. His signature role, of course, is Mask of the Red Death, right, where he plays the Hop Toad.
Right, yeah. Which if I've seen it so long ago that I don't remember it at all.
Yeah, no, that's a legit classic, I think.
Okay.
I think he was also in Son of Dracula.
All right, okay.
With Ringo?
He plays Igor in Son of Dracula.
Yeah.
But I enjoy how flippant he is. Like when they walk past and there's that bed that's just drenched in blood, and he's just like, he's constantly so glib about everything. Yeah, lots of fun. And then we get Soapy Boobs pretty shortly after this, and Askwith mugging around in a knight's helmet.
Yeah. Well, it kind of peters out there, right? Because I suppose there is a plot. There's this programming of people, but yeah, I mean, so there's a lumpy monster.
Yes.
Which turned out to be Goff with burns, right? That's his backstory. And then I assume the fact that the aunt is used to run this whorehouse in was it Berlin or Hamburg? Sorry, and all that. There's supposed to be some kind of vague Nazi experiment tie-in thing, right? But so what's the end game here? I was trying to. Is he just trying to create like zombies that he can control? I mean, I wasn't quite sure what his. Usually these people have a world domination like MO, right? What's Michael Goff wanting to do?
What I felt was cutting back to Bizarre, or Secrets of Sex. That whole thing of where he's like, where like sex becomes a torture chamber, right? I think he just wants to get laid, and it's not going to happen unless he drills into ladies' brains and rewires their circuitry so that they are not repulsed by him, right?
I mean, it's certainly an admirable goal.
Okay, sure. But yeah, I honestly.
Did I mention I used to be Top of the Pops floor manager?
But no, I do honestly think that's maybe all that it's about, is that he wants to get his end away, and it's very difficult for a guy who looks like a chewed bunch of bubblegum. So
he's the grown up little kid from Secrets of Sex, right?
Exactly, basically.
But it's the reason I bring it up is I think it's worth bringing up because what I like about Horror Hospital, and again, it's a mess really, but what I do like about it is the fact that it's kind of certainly when I first saw it when I was a teenager on television, I don't think I was smart enough to I probably had I enjoyed it back then, but I had a slightly condescending, snotty teenager's attitude where I don't think I was fully aware of quite how self-parodic it is. Whereas watching it this time, it's so obviously to the point where they haven't even really bothered to think it out properly. They just, he's in a wheelchair, he's doing experiments, decapitating car. What more do you want? It's just vaguely got the kind of certain tropes in play, and then just plays them in a weird way, like riffing, like they say Franco does. Right, speaking of Franco again, is you get the few tropes in place and then you riff on them like a jazz soloist, right? And I feel Horror Hospital is about as close to a British version of a Jess Franco film as I can think.
Except we don't have enough zooms of crotches.
Yeah, that's true. We're missing a bit of that, but do you know what I mean? In so much as it's not really about the plot at all. It's more about mood and tropes and like a dream, fever dream or something.
Yeah, which it does do really well. The cinematography again is quite nice. The countryside does have this weird, misty, hazy, dreamy quality about it, and the zombie gray, health farm victims or whatever. They're all.
It might just be the Dennis Price thing that's making me think that. But do either of you think it's slightly Franco-esque?
Yeah, I see that.
Right. There's just what else is like this in British cinema?
It really does sort of go against the crowd, doesn't it? It's like nothing. Well, look like with Secrets of Sex, nothing quite like that in sort of British sex film sort of genre. And then with this, it's like a really like odd sort of like nothing else that was going on at the time. Really.
Yeah, it's notable, and again, like Secrets of Sex is more really, if you were going to be hardcore and put your objective film critics hat on, it's not really very good, and it is a mess. But I still like it, and I liked it the first time I saw it. I liked it this time, and again, I'm going to watch this again one day. I think for my sins. I don't know. There's something about it.
It's very lovable, and it's trashy in all the right ways, I think. And I mean, like there's sometimes with horror of this time and with English horror that there can be a bit of a lack of that go for the gusto kind of, but it's good. It's gross in all the right ways. I mean, some people have compared it a little bit, funnily enough, to Rocky Horror Picture Show, and there's almost like the camp does at moments veer in that direction, right? Yes. But this is more I don't know, this has more, it goes for the gusto a bit more.
I asked you if you wanted to go along and see the Rocky Horror Picture Show. You said yes, so I murdered your family because I hate the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Half Man, Half Biscuit there, you mentioned the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But even just the swearing, I was like pleasantly surprised by, the liberal use of the word fuck, which I wasn't necessarily expecting. So yeah, it's just a little bit of an edge to the film that makes it all the more fun. I think.
Interesting to your point there, Nick. This is something. So if you remember, you probably recall this, Gav. Back in whenever it was the early to mid 90s, when Vipco made their kind of comeback, and they were re-releasing Zombie Flesh Eaters and stuff like that, and that kind of thing. One of the few British films they put out was Horror Hospital, right?
Yeah, and that's when I first saw it. I think I'd have been about 15 when I first saw it, when Vipco brought it out. I think they must have done some sort of deal with Richard Gordon, because I think they also brought out Tower of Evil and Seminar.
Yes, so. Yeah. Well, but again, it's interesting. I think all of those fit the pattern in a little bit of like how Pete Walker was doing things a little bit more visceral than we were used to in British horror cinema, right? And Horror Hospital is just a little bit, a little bit the Franco thing. I was a little bit more European, maybe a little bit.
I think prior to Horror Hospital, I never realised how British horror films could get this kind of wild and outrageous. I think prior to this, I've sort of mostly just been familiar with the Hammer and Amicus stuff,
Yeah. Which of course have their own charms and stuff, but especially when you're a younger man, you're looking for something, you're looking for a bit more red meat, and after you've seen all those things countless times on late night repeats and stuff,
that's why we were buying Vipco video releases.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes you'd get a winner, and then sometimes you'd end up with the nostril picker. Although, to be fair, I actually do fucking love Nostropica because there's something a bit wrong with me. But yeah, so Horror Hospital, yeah, no, definitely an outlier.
I should say I also quite liked the bit near the end where they're all running around like mad and that the place is kind of on fire and stuff. And Robin Askwith stops to grab like chicken off of a plate or whatever and eat it. That's one of the weirdest scenes I've seen. In the final climactic moment of
an ad-lib as well, apparently, right? Like,
okay,
they didn't have lunch that day on set.
he just saw some food. Great.
You can't trust fucking actors. That's the thing. Never let actors do what they want to do. They'll. It's like the whole thing about never tell an actor to like, if it's a dying scene, right? Oh, take your time. That's no. It's gonna be like half an hour long, right? I was like, yeah. Any last thoughts, bits of trivia, anything we haven't said about Horror Hospital?
Well, I mean, even though it's a child of the 70s, because like I was surprised to see Balch playing for years at the US Driving, playing like way to the 1980s. Well, one of the co-features to Dr. Butcher MD for a while. The last play that I can find for it at the Drive, yeah, the last drive played I found it at the Drive in 1984 when it was played as a co-feature to House on the Edge of the Park. So, 12 years old. Yeah.
When it played Dr. Butcher MD, was that when it was Dr. Bloodbath?
No, it's still Horror Hospital at that point.
Oh, okay, because that would have been a good double bill on a Dr. Bloodbath. Now.
But I mean, the hospital doctor thing. I mean, it all makes sense.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Like, I mean, this is one thing to us, all coming from the British Isles. It's a peculiar beast for us. Imagine, seeing this in a fucking drive-in in Texas or something. Imagine what people made of this, right?
I would love to see Dr. Butcher MD and Horror Hospital back to back on a big screen. What a pleasure that would be.
Yeah, while making out with your cousin in denim cutoffs in the backseat. It's a perfect night out, right?
Am I wrong? I think Joe Bob Briggs did a review of Dr. Butcher MD back when he was doing his drive-in reviews. I'm fairly certain that I read a collected book of his years ago.
Okay, I wonder if he ever got round to Horror Hospital. So,
Google it.
Anyway, this is disconcerting now because there's either two of me or two of Nick. And Gav, he's still there.
Yeah. Stealing my soul for now.
Damn it.
Yeah.
Balch was right.
Yeah.
On a webcam, and that's it. You're fucked. You're pulled into the third, fourth, and fifth dimensions.
So yeah, I think this is an example of something that people should follow our example and give themselves a double bill of Secrets of Sex and Horror Hospital, because they're both, again, despite kind of being messes, they're notable and unusual and very entertaining and thought-provoking messes, I think. And I mean, my takeaway as well was a real shame that Antony Balch didn't get to make some more films, actually. The world could have done with some more Antony Balch madness, I think.
Agreed.
Yeah, okay, well, cheers, Gav. Another well-curated show. It's a shame you're not in it. But maybe we'll have that fixed by the next. I mean, I'm thinking oddly enough, just because I quite like when this happens, and this seems to have happened entirely organically, we've actually got a setup for the sequel to this show.
Mhm.
Son of Dracula and Naked Came the Stranger.
Yep.
Are
Let's
you
do it.
you up for that?
Well, yeah, maybe. We'll see.
Oh, I sense some pushback.
I don't know. We'll see. Maybe Son of Dracula.
Okay. Anyway, until whatever it is, Gav, welcome back anytime.
Yep.
Oh,
Always a pleasure.
thank
And
you.
yeah, we shall see you all again and in the Ffilm Crack Craic. So cheerio, bye.
Take care.